Hi, and welcome to my channel, Plane Legacy. Today we're taking a look at the P26 Peashooter. The P26 was the creation of the Boeing Aircraft Company, which was founded by William E. Boeing in 1916 as the Pacific Aero Products Company. Boeing was becoming more active in aircraft manufacturing in the 1930s as that company emerged into prominence. Their Model 248 was presented in 1931, with prototypes flying in March of the following year. The design settled on a 28-foot wingspan and a 23-foot length, featuring the characteristic high headrest seen here. This open cockpit design was the Army Air Corps frontline fighter for most of the decade until replaced by the still underwhelming Curtiss P26 and Seversky P35. The P26 was the last fighter airplane produced by Boeing until they acquired McDonnell Douglas and their aircraft programs in 1997. The legacy of the Boeing P26 represents a transition from older aircraft designs to ones that would dominate in piston-powered aircraft from then on. Just taking a quick look at this single-seat fighter airplane, we see an open cockpit and fixed landing gear, both common features in its predecessors, although some pains was taken to increase aerodynamics on those landing gear. While the craft did feature a low-wing monoplane design, it was constructed with an externally braced wing, complete with the drag-inducing wires seen here. However, the P-26 had an all-metal design, which would become standard in most aircraft that followed. A forward-thinking design for the time, it resulted in reasonable handling characteristics and did have higher speeds compared to other military fighter aircraft of the era. The landing speeds were also increased, which led to the need for another development of the day, landing flaps. Flaps reduced the landing speed by increasing the camber, or curvature, of the wing, increasing lift. Landing flaps were added after a rash of accidents occurred in the testing of the P-26 because of that higher landing speed. However, landing flaps became a standard feature on almost every aircraft designed since. Capable of a top speed of 234 miles per hour, it reflected the Army Air Corps' concept of the pursuit aircraft, hence the P designation given to military fighter aircraft at the time. The normal cruising speed was 199 miles an hour with a range of about 360 miles. The power plant was a Pratt Whitney R-1340 Wasp series air-cooled 9-cylinder radial engine with a 2-bladed fixed-pitch propeller. The R prefix designates the radial engine. Referred to as the Peashooter, this aircraft could be armed with either two .30 caliber machine guns or one .30 and one .50 caliber machine gun. This minimalist armament, while not uncommon for the era, was insufficient for frontline fighter service. Actually, the Peashooter nickname may have come from the gun blast tubes that protrude from inside the engine cowling. A 200-pound bomb load could also be suspended underneath the airplane between the fixed landing gear. The aircraft in this video is a part of the collection of the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. It is a beautifully restored example of what was once considered to be a state-of-the-art fighter design. The museum says its markings reflect the commander's aircraft of the 19th Pursuit Squadron, 18th Pursuit Group, stationed at Wheeler Field, Hawaii in 1938. During the 1930s, aircraft and other military forces, and those on the drawing boards in the United States, featured closed cockpit designs with either folding or sliding canopies, and usually featured retractable landing gear. Speed, firepower, range, all these were eclipsing the P-26 by the beginning of World War II in 1939. Power plants were more powerful and featured variable pitch propeller systems more often than not, and other significant structural updates, making the P-26 obsolete by the late 1930s. Still, P-26 aircraft remained in service until the United States produced a sufficient quantity of improved aircraft designs to replace them. At the outbreak of the War in the Pacific, a handful of P-26s found themselves on the front lines with the 18th Pursuit Group at Wheeler Field and the 4th Composite Group at Clark Fields in the Philippines. Several stateside units used the P-26 for training and other duties, and P-26s served with the 16th Pursuit Group in the Panama Canal Zone. Boeing's P-26 also served with the Spanish Republican Air Force in the Spanish Civil War, as many P-26s did find themselves in foreign service. A few aerial victories against Japanese aircraft were recorded by P-26s, those that were serving with the Chinese Nationalist Air Force and the Philippine Air Force. Some countries, such as Guatemala, also purchased the P-26, and some were used in air races according to various sources. As mentioned, the aircraft featured here is found at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. This P-26 is just a beautifully restored aircraft, and I'm indebted to their website for some of the photos that you will see here, including a couple of photos from the interior of the cockpit. Let's go ahead and take a look at what a 1930s cockpit would have looked like. In this photo, on the lower left with a green arrow pointing towards them, are the throttle and mixture levers on the throttle quadrant. On the instrument panel, left-hand side with the green arrows again, you see the master switch and the amp meter and the magneto switch as well. The basic instrument cluster, starting on the top row, left-hand side, we see the airspeed indicator with a compass in the center and the RPM gauge on the right-hand side. In the lower level of instruments, you see the altimeter, the turn and bank coordinator, and an engine temperature gauge that also featured fuel and oil pressure. On the lower right-hand corner there, you see the manifold pressure gauge just beneath a clock. There's a green arrow pointed on the left-hand side at the lever that was used to hand crank the flaps up or down. Here's the additional instruments on the lower instrument panel, including the fuel selector switch, which enabled the pilot to switch between fuel tanks in flight, and a fuel quantity gauge. Also, there is the gun selector switch and a round counter window that showed how much ammunition was left for the machine guns. An emblem for the Boeing Aircraft Company is also on the panel. On the left-hand side, we see a blue arrow, and that is marking something. I'm not sure exactly what it is. If you know, please put a comment in the comment section and cite where you get that information from, please. It says carburetor and hot, and I believe it has something to do with carburetor heat. On the lower right-hand side is one of the 30 caliber machine guns. This channel will mostly showcase the lesser-known aircraft developed between the 1930s and the early 1990s. The reason for this emphasis is planes developed during this time period tended to be the result of problems that aviation needed to overcome in order to fly higher, further, faster, more efficiently. The designs tended to be much more mechanical in nature rather than digital, and they focused a lot on the human factor rather than the computer. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Be sure to click the like button and to subscribe to be notified of the next episode coming along. In the future, we're going to spend some time talking about the airplanes, but also the people that designed them, built them, maintained them, and flew them, and some of the interesting history that went along with them. We'll see you the next time.